Good morning, everyone. We have a quorum. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And Brian, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we start off on a really high note. I'd like for an acknowledgement of the Kids First Cooperman Bogue Awards. Linda Leedy, would you please make that presentation?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Now more than ever, those who work to give children brighter futures deserve recognition. The Juvenile Welfare Board honors our social service professionals who consistently go above and beyond to put children first with our Kids First Cooperman Bogue Award. Mary Wooding is a social service counselor with Healthy Families Pinellas, a program of the Florida Department of Health in Pinellas County. Mary, who has been with the Department of Health for more than a decade, has always put children and families first. Mary, can you raise your hand? Now, let me give you just a little bit of background as to why she's so deserving of this award. She started as a home visitor and then moved into the challenging role of social service counselor. No matter their situation, Mary always quickly establishes a good rapport with her new families. And despite her consistently full caseload, she's always volunteered to help support the higher risk families, precisely because she knows they face very, very difficult situations. Her compassion, initiative, and benevolent character have been so helpful to the families she serves, especially during the pandemic. An example of her willingness to go above and beyond: during one of her first visits, a mom opened her refrigerator, and let's just say the cupboard was bare. There was some food, but not enough, particularly for a family of 5. And Mary knew the family didn't have any transportation, so she leapt into action and immediately acquired a couple of boxes of food from community resources. And then if that wasn't enough, she hand-delivered them to the family that evening. Mary's compassion and hard work on her clients' behalf doesn't go unnoticed. She is an inspiration to her coworkers because she epitomizes what social work is all about. Mary always makes herself available to advise or assist her colleagues and is an excellent trainer and mentor to new Healthy Families staff. Her supervisor tells us that she routinely has new staff shadow Mary in the field, precisely because of who she is and how she demonstrates her support for her families. So why is Mary so exceptional? She draws on her own personal and life experiences as well as her professional skills in her work with her families. She's really passionate about educating the families in developing those strong bonds to care for each other as they implement the Healthy Families curriculum. And there's no challenge she won't help her families face and overcome. From helping a mom and child escape an abusive relationship to helping another young mother get her son placed in McCabe Preschool. One single working young mother told us, "I tell everyone about Miss Mary. Everyone wishes they had my caseworker. She and the Healthy Families program have helped me tremendously." With her unwavering support and encouragement, Mary's clients tend to stay with the program for the full 5 years, and so the results are exceptional. One mother wrote a letter just before she and her family graduated, and she said, "Mary is the most amazing caseworker that a family could ask for. When I first started working with her 5 years ago, I was depressed, jobless, living with my mother, and had zero confidence. But now that has all changed. Mary has helped me reach every goal I have set for myself. She gave me hope I could make myself a better person and a better mother, and I truly have." Please join us in congratulating Mary Wooding as our outstanding Kids First Cooperman Bogue Award winner.
Mary,
Mary-
I'm going to ask you to look to the camera over on the other side.
Mary, once again, congratulations. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes.
Do you want to go to the podium, please?
First of all, good morning to everyone. Just wanted to say thank you so much. This is a huge opportunity. Didn't realize you do your work every day, but don't realize what a big difference that you make. Getting this award means a lot to me. It means a lot to me for myself and for my fellow coworkers. We talk about the family that you just spoke about. She lived with her mother, and one of her goals was to move out. Before she left the program, she moved out. She moved across the street from her mother, which was a really big deal for her. You know, she moved out. But once again, thank you. This is a great opportunity. It's great to have JWB have our back on everything, and it's just really, really powerful what we do and we take to our family. So thank you.
Thank you again, Mary, and congratulations. Moving on to the consent items. Assuming everyone has had an opportunity to review, are there any questions or comments?
Move approval of the consent agenda items.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion's approved. Moving on to the action items. Approve award of new strategically aligned programs. Karen?
Good morning, Karen Boges, Chief Program Officer, and I'm going to be up here a few times this morning, so I hope you don't get sick of hearing from me. Our first item, action item this morning is to approve awards for newly strategically aligned programs in the areas of school success and school readiness. This is in support of JWB's strategic plan to procure and implement new programs to meet our strategic goals. This process was a two-part process. The first part was our letters of intent. The second part was our request for proposals. We received 15 letters of intent. 10 of them were invited to respond for requests for proposals. We received 10. They all met minimum criteria, and they moved on to the evaluation committees. In your board memo, you will find how each committee was comprised. And this go-around, as well as the last one, we tried to include community members in our evaluation teams. The first round of evaluation, you'll see the criteria, how that was set and how it was to be scored. Proposals must have met 65 or higher to be considered for further evaluation. Round 2 of the evaluation went to the executive committee. 9 of the proposals met 65 or higher. The initial agreement for this award is for 18-month period starting April 1st and concluding 9/30/2024. The executive committee is recommending to fund the top 2 proposals, which you will see in your attachment are Directions for Living's First 5 program, as well as Learning Empowered's Triangles Partnering for Early Childhood Success. And you will also find the attachment of all the rankings and the recommendations. The executive team considered the geographic distribution of the proposals across North, Mid, and South County, and the programs we are recommending reported serving the entire county. The top 2 programs are very closely aligned with JWB's strategic plan as they support quality early learning environments, providing specialized interventions and supports to children in need. And prior to the pandemic, we knew that children were having great behavioral difficulties and challenges in classrooms, and that has only been magnified over the last several years. So these 2 programs will be addressing those needs for both the children, for the families, as well as the teaching staff and centers. The 2 programs have confirmed that they will work collaboratively together to serve across the county, working with JWB on choosing and selecting the most appropriate sites. So the recommendation, I will read that. The executive team recommends board action to award $1,409,804 for fiscal year '23 to be distributed according to the attached rankings and recommendations by reducing the fiscal year '23 future programming budget $2,873,392 to $1,463,588. The annualized amount of this award fiscal year '24 is $2,636,347. And I will open it up for any questions.
Do you have any questions from the board? Comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. The same sign, the motion's approved. Approve award for workforce stabilization. Karen, you're up again.
Yes. So, and just sitting here and listening to the staff member from Healthy Families that we just heard, I hope you all can keep that in mind as I go through this presentation, this memo. So over the past 3 years, and certainly before the pandemic, we were seeing workforce challenges at some of our programs in terms of pay and the ability to recruit and retain staff. And again, this has magnified over the last several years. You've heard me come up here several times talking about this. Last April, we prioritized our early learning centers, our out-of-school time programs, Healthy Families being one of the home visiting programs. And we prioritized those because of the workforce challenges that they were facing. Without staff, we are not able to deliver quality services to our families and children. And so last year, you all approved through those efforts for those programs. At that time, we discussed and through our budgeting process, earmarked dollars for this fiscal year '23 and projected for '24 for workforce stabilization for the remaining programs in our portfolio. In September, we invited 55 of our programs to put forward proposals for workforce stabilization. We had 35 of those programs respond. Today, you will see 27 of those programs before you. We had 3 full days at JWB of our teams, our JWB staff, reviewing those proposals. And so we are bringing forward those recommendations. There are 8 providers that we held back. We're still working with them to finalize, and I will be bringing those next month in March to all of you. So in fiscal year '23, we budgeted a prorated amount of $2,550,000 for workforce stabilization and forecasted an annualized amount of $5.1 million to be effective in fiscal year '24. So I will read the recommendation. Staff are recommending the board to approve amendments for 27 of the 35 programs under consideration with a total recommendation of $1,971,190 for fiscal year '23, reducing workforce stabilization from $2,550,000 to $578,810. And you will see all the recommendations in the attached spreadsheet. The annualized amounts of these amendments are $3,607,546 for fiscal year '24, leaving a remaining balance in the forecast of $1,492,454. And as we indicated in the memo, that we looked at those projected 8 additional programs. We are seeing that those dollars for fiscal year '23 are over by, I believe, $179,000. However, what I would say is as we're working with those providers, we are seeing those numbers decrease. So it may not be that high of an amount. In December of last year, December 2022, I came to the board. We reduced the contract for our Early Learning Coalition School Readiness Plus program. And at that time, we said we may need to look at those dollars that we reduced that contract to address either workforce stabilization or new strategically aligned programs or any other initiatives that we had. So there are dollars that could be used to cover that difference for fiscal year '23, but for the annualized amount, we are just under the total that we earmarked. I'll open up for any questions.
Any questions?
Just move to approve. These are hard-to-fill positions.
Okay, so then I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
You have a second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. As opposed, same sign. Motion's approved.
Just a comment that
Yes.
we've been looking at this for so long. We knew that it was a problem in the nonprofit sector. And I'm just very, very grateful that JWB just dug in and got it done, and that the board approved the money to be spent. So recognize the good work, quick work. It probably wasn't as quick as you all needed, but very pleased to see this happen.
I'd second that, and I'm really pleased that the staff stayed consistently focused on it to make sure that that we were aware of it and bringing it to our attention for these additional awards. So thanks again, everybody. Hopefully it'll help. All right. Karen, you can take a rest. Okay, let's approval of the surplus inventory removal. Laura?
Yes. Good morning. I'm Laura Peel, Director of IT, and I am here this morning to approve, or to get approval for their surplus inventory removal. So as you probably heard me talk about this before, I'm usually up here once or twice a year. We're required to assess all of our equipment, furniture, and items that we have here in the building to determine its usefulness for JWB. The attached list is what we've determined this time to be surplus. And if you notice on there, I just want to talk about some of the laptops real quick. Our laptops are replaced every 3 years after the warranty expires, and they're either moved to a training card or they're donated. You'll notice that there's 8 laptops on the list that the warranty is not up till August. The reason why they are on there is because of the issues with supply chain and getting them early. So we're anticipating ordering them within the next month or so. It's going to take several months to get them in. And August is when they will come off the inventory, and they'll be moved to their training card or donated. The pending board approval, all items on this list that we think are useful will be donated to JWB agencies first. After that, we'll look at other 501c3s that may want the equipment. Everything else will either be recycled or put in the waste disposal bin. So that's all I have today. Any questions?
Any questions? Have a motion or a second? Second. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. As opposed, same sign. Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Right, let's move on to the presentations. Procurement update, caregiver support services, Paul Webb.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Webb, Senior Program Consultant. I am the contract manager and consultant directly involved in the Respite program, and I was involved in the procurement as a co-lead in development. My colleagues know this is a program very close to my heart, and I'm very passionate about it as well. Also, you're going to notice through this presentation, I've got a wee bit of an accent. So if I'm looking to my left here, it's for some pacing from Karen. If she's doing this, it's slow down. If I'm looking over my shoulder, Megan's saying I'm using some vernaculars that might not necessarily translate well. So just putting that out there just now. I'm honoured to be joined by our colleagues from the Children's Home who really made this possible. Larry Cooper. Mr. Cooper, because Larry just doesn't roll off properly. Carol Hajanak, who is the Director of Community-Based Clinical Services, and of course Irene Ruckus, the CEO and President, and I believe that's Felicia there as well. Okay, great to see you, Felicia. So this has truly been a journey, and all journeys begin with a genesis and a beginning. The beginning of this was really moving from JWB's goal of prevention of child abuse and neglect. Now, we've got a lot of result areas, but I just echo that, the power of that, the prevention of child abuse and neglect. Now, how do we approach that? It requires multiple different approaches. Foremost, we looked at research and evidence-based respite care. That's what's launched us into our journey. Now, being JWB, we looked at the literature. And the literature defines respite care as a temporary relief for caregivers who are providing care to children with emotional and behavioural challenges or developmental disabilities in order to prevent abuse and neglect. Now, this is a technical definition. Behind this, we've got families. These are the children we may say at the supermarket in aisle 17, having emotional outbursts and difficulties. These are the families we may see at the checkout, struggling and counting pennies to pay for their groceries. These are the families that people walk away from. These are the families that people stand behind impatiently. These are the children we see in restaurants having difficulties and people approach the waitress and say, "Can I sit over here?" At JWB, these are the families we walk towards. At JWB, these are the families we reach out a helping hand to. At JWB, these are the families we sit down next to. So again, this has been a journey that we've taken together, and it really has been a collective effort, both internal to JWB and with our community partners. In the short 6 months, we went from conceptualizing this wonderful idea. Irene's smiling here, she knows this journey. We spoke to our community partners and said, what is respite? What are the community needs? We then moved on to a literature review, moved through approvement, and 6 months later launched this new and innovative program. The program launched in June 2022. Now, we looked at the literature in depth, not just one research study and not just two. We looked at both national and international studies. That will be no surprise to people. And what did the literature tell us? That children with social emotional challenges and developmental disabilities were at elevated risk for abuse and neglect. It also told us that caretakers of these children, just through the ongoing daily demands, were at increased risk of emotional challenges, impacts on their physical and emotional well-being, and financial insecurity associated with the care of these children. These stressors all combined created interpersonal family conflicts, economic hardships, and depleted social supports to the point that risk factors for childhood maltreatment increased. It would be of no surprise then that in counterbalance to this, the delivery of high quality, family-centred and family-driven respite care significantly reduces the risk for childhood abuse and neglect within these strained families. Now, we looked at a model. We looked nationwide. There's numerous models out across the country. We wanted to look at creating something unique and different that captured all dimensions of care, that really put our arms round about these families and looked at the whole family, the whole system. The wraparound model of care has been well established for the last 20 years across the United States. It basically rests on the principle that it's driven by family choice, driven by individualized need. We started off our process with the children's home, and we brought together parent advisory groups. We had these parents in a room and saying, you tell us, you inform us how we design this program. We then moved on to creating ongoing parent support groups to reduce that isolation, to share information, to network and create resources. We looked at continuous assessment clinically. These are complicated children and complicated families. We need to understand their needs. Continuous clinical assessment to guide them in the correct pathway to care. We also wanted to look at a range of respite care options. In the past, we had a singular model, respite care providers going into the home. There's certainly value in that. Every family is different. Every child is different. We wanted to look at group care, after-schools programming, childcare, based on the individual needs of each of those children. We moved through and looked at cultural competency. We speak about that in general terms. We narrowed that lens to think about cultural competency in the context of the family system. These are individual families with individual values, individual beliefs that we had to treat individually on a case-by-case basis. Many of these families have been through tremendous struggles and adversity. We folded in the principles of trauma-informed care, being sensitive to the challenges and the struggles that these families have been through. We had to integrate this care. We talk about systems navigation and care coordination. You see this is represented as a hub here. Central to that, we've got the coordination of care, not just the provision of respite care itself, but connection to other valuable resources in the community. Linguistic competencies. People know that I enjoy my literature and I can be quite verbose at times. So you have to adjust that language. Irene's laughing again there. We look at the language of the family. We can't be coming in and using acronyms and expressions that they just look at as baffled, or they might not understand my accent sometimes. But we use the language of the family. We relate to them in terms that they can understand. That is how we engage, and I applaud the Children's Home for the model that they've created. We gave them something that didn't exist, and they have built something remarkable. And yet, as we say, the hat goes even deeper. We need to support these families in the long term. This is a short-term intervention. The Children's Home has embraced a training model, powerful tools for caregivers. This is a training curriculum that supports these parents in developing coping strategies, looking at sustaining self-sufficiency in the long term, reducing stress, improving self-care. Research has shown that PTC interventions improve the long-term well-being of these caretakers. It reduces the risks for abuse and neglect, and in particular, it supports families, grand families, kinship families who have taken into their care children later in life, and they need to think about not next year, not the year after, but 10 years' time, who will care for this child? Intergenerational care of children is central to what we need to look at here for children that have got long-term, lifelong needs. So Karen gave a very important presentation on workforce stabilization. This is something that we recognise, and quality staff are the absolute bedrock of any quality programming. Again, I want to applaud the Children's Home. When they came to us with their proposal, they came off the block strong and said, we need to recruit well-qualified, experienced staff. We need to be able to go out there and recruit the people necessary to provide the correct supports to these families. You look at the staffing model here, we've got a clinical director, program managers, clinical team leads, family navigators, respite care supervisors. These are all positions that are relatively difficult to recruit for. In particular, I want to point to respite care providers. I had the absolute privilege, again, of visiting the program last month and meeting with the managers, and they were talking about the qualifications of these respite care providers. Many of them are registered behavioural technicians, skilled in ABA. These are individuals that are skilled in working with children who are on the autism spectrum, developmental delays. The most challenging children at our childcare centres often struggle with serving. And then we see the outcome of this and the fruits of competitive salaries. In the space of less than 6 months, the programme is at 86% staffing capacity. 86%. A significant accomplishment as this programme moves forward. So part of the objectives here for the programme has really been increasing our reach and serving families and children county-wide. We also spoke about the different issues that can bring families to the attention of the respite care programme. So part of what we've done is began to gather information regarding referral sources to make sure we were covering the entire system. You can see that services have been referred from mental health providers, navigator programmes, the Sheriff's Office, CPI, our child welfare system. In recent years, we've increased our reach in partnership with the child welfare system, because ultimately these are the children we want to prevent from deeper penetration into that system. The Guardian Ad Litem Office, and even medical providers. Carol, the programme manager who's overseen this, has been out visiting facilities, programmes, neighbourhood family centres, and that outreach and engagement continues. And we just see tremendous growth as a result of that. We see a range of referral systems that tells us we're touching every element of the community here. So we looked at the demographics of children coming into the system. Now these charts here can share some important information. If you look at the chart for gender, you'll see that the majority of children coming in are male. This is of no surprise. Males, young boys in particular, are those children that tend to exhibit the most externalized behavior problems, the most significant challenges. These are the kids that often get sent home from childcare centres. These are the kids that struggle in the early years of school and beyond. We're identifying these children coming in, and the clinical component of this programme, before we even get to Respite, is doing an in-depth assessment as to what those presenting challenges are. Now, that's not to overlook the young girls in this programme coming in. Generally speaking, these young children tend to internalise their behaviour. I call them those hidden disabilities, those hidden challenges. The programme is also looking at them on a case-by-case basis and really doing an assessment to make sure that their needs are brought to the forefront as well. We spoke about diversity, cultural competence. We're tracking race and ethnicity, making sure that we've got an equal spread and we're touching all aspects of our community. And then the reasons for referral. This is an important piece of element for us here. We look at the majority of referrals that came through for what is generally described as social and emotional difficulties. That's a catch-all phrase. What does that really mean? We need to understand that. We also see a segment that talks about acute situational and family stressors, presenting mental health disorders, developmental disabilities, and developmental delays. These challenges don't stand in isolation. They all combine together. We've got families coming through this programme that can check all of these boxes. All of these stressors, all of these difficulties, all of these presenting challenges can combine to increase the level of risk overall. It's important we're tracking that, we're looking at it, and moving forward, continuing to understand the profile of the children and families served in this programme as we move forward. So next steps. We want to continue to strengthen linkages and integrations across the entire system of care. We look at this as an umbrella, as a blanket, an additional resource. The other week, the Children's Home had their open house, which was incredibly well attended. 2 days later, I was getting phone calls and emails from various providers saying, tell me more about this programme. And I know that Carol has been busy since that point as well. Developing increased collaborations throughout the county with our community mental health system. We have the wonderful work going on with the Children's Mental Health Initiative. We see this programme as intersecting directly with it to strengthen the work that's happening in that sphere. Tracking national, systemic and legislative movements that may impact caretakers. The Children's Home has really led the way in this regard. They were ahead of the curve when the Families First Act came out that impacted changes to legislation for the child welfare system. They also led the way in navigation and providing support to multi-generational families, grandparents, grandfamilies, as they're often referred to. This programme gives us the potential to explore longitudinal studies to move it towards evidence-based standing. We have taken best practices, evidence-based elements, and created them into a programme that really, truly, and I say this with great sincerity, leads the way nationwide. In all of our research, we found respite programmes. We did not find anything close to the level of sophistication that we have built here. We hope to move through studies in the long term to hold this up as evidence-based, as a model in its entirety. I want to take this moment just now to give recognition to the Children's Home, to Larry Cooper in particular. The kinship programme recently reached evidence-based status in the Californian Clearinghouse, a significant accomplishment. Larry, please stand up on that one. This took years of work and dedication and many, many conversations. It fills me with great excitement to think that this could be the next step for our Respite programme. We also want to increase modalities of care and ultimately look at the core performance areas of child abuse and neglect and tracking those metrics as we move forward. So reflections on level of care. Every picture tells a story. The board has heard some discussions before. We've talked about our childcare centres and staffing ratios and staffing shortages. When I started out my career in social work in London as a residential social worker many years ago, I learned probably one of the most valuable lessons regarding level of care. I was working 60 hours a week. Back in those days, there was no nice literature regarding compassion fatigue and burnout and stress. And even then, we had staffing shortages. I showed up as a young man at the residential program, these children with significant developmental delays, many of them non-verbal. So I walk in, as Paul has arrived. It's Saturday, and this is a day the kids all go swimming. So I walk in, and 5 children run towards me, I kid you not. One in this arm, one in this arm, 2 holding my leg. And for the sake of this story, Ricky runs towards me, and his absolute frustration just punches me in the stomach. In that moment there, I realized that a staffing ratio of 1 to 4 was manageable, a staffing ratio of 1 to 5, outside parameters. So behind every picture, we've also got a good story as well. This wonderful family, myself and Felicia, had the opportunity to go out and meet with. A rather simple task, you would think. We're going out to take a picture to feature an annual report. Wonderful children, energetic children, each with their own individual challenges, and a parent who had been through incredible challenges. I had the idea, let's go to the fence and take a picture. It took us 1 hour and 45 minutes to stage this picture. There was multiple costume changes. And you'll see this beautiful, mischievous child just over my right-hand shoulder who continually tapped me on my head, fascinated by my accent. As I left this home, exhausted, this parent approached me and said, "Thank you, JWB. I could not do this without you." With tears in her eyes, she thanked me. She'd tell everyone at JWB how thankful I am for this program. My family could not be here without you. I want that voice to be heard just now. And I also got home as well. People know me, I'm a triathlete. I was up at 5 o'clock this morning and cycled 20 miles and then went for a quick run. Just a quick run, a wee run in the morning. So I left this family an hour and 45 minutes later, exhausted, fatigued. And I was just humbled and thought, this parent has to get up tomorrow morning alone and do it all over again. 7 days a week, without relief, ongoing, with no end in sight. The value of the program in just telling this story exceeds all words or any Scottish expression that I could use. Turn it over for questions.
Do you have any? Do I have any questions or comments from the board?
I do.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you to your team for your level of commitment. Because of what you do, I may not see a family like this. And respite care sometimes means the difference between staying at home and coming into dependency. And like you said, we may not recognize what an hour, a few hours, a weekend, the energy that a parent can get to go through those 7 days a week. So thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other board members comment? Susan?
I cannot let the moment pass. Larry Cooper, when I was still the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we wrote the original kinship services together. And I guess what I want to, what year was that? I can't even, 04. And we wrote that grant and we were funded by Juvenile Welfare Board. And I guess the point I want to make here is we sit here in 2023 talking about the good work. And when you think about going back to 04, when we knew that grandparents raising grandchildren, at least I saw it all the time at Big Brothers Big Sisters, was an issue. And the longevity of the good work speaks for itself. So I have to recognize that longevity of time for Larry Cooper.
Paul, an excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you.
For all the
I was caught off
information
guard
and
with the tears at the end. I apologise, but I
No.
pulled it back together.
We all have those at times.
I'm very passionate about the work.
But I just want to say that impressive work, excellent collaboration amongst the organizations, and recognition on that's impressive. What's also impressive to me is that it's now here. JWB, the state of Florida, JWB Pinellas County is leading the way and will continue to lead the way, thanks to the board's strategies and the focus of staff and key people like yourself and our supportive programs that work with us to provide such an important service to the community. So again, thank you all for what you've done and a great presentation.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. I don't know how you're going to follow that, Laura, but Karen, as usual, it's your turn again. Karen and Laura, the program.
Well, I'm like, how am I going to follow that with program and financial oversight? But that's okay. I think what you see here is, and I want to highlight and take a moment, is, JWB staff, the commitment, the expertise, the dedication they have to the work that they do here. We're going to talk about that. But, Paul is one of the team of JWB staff that exemplify that on a daily basis. So, thank you. We fund, as of today, 100 programs in our community for children and families. And we wanted to bring to you today what our process looks like for ensuring oversight, both programmatically and financially. Why do we do this? Well, we want to ensure that quality services are being delivered. We want to adhere to the financial policies and procedures that we have put forth. We want to be accountable and compliant. Outcomes help us make the best informed decisions, reporting to all of you, reporting back to our providers, and reporting to the community as a whole, the progress we are making and the impact that we are having. This also allows us, for those programs that may be struggling, to provide focused technical assistance in different areas. And in some cases, if programs continue to struggle, we may need to place them on a performance improvement plan or a corrective action plan. Next slide. So we use a three-legged stool approach. You can click on. We have 3 units here at JWB that work very collaboratively together. We have our program administration unit, which consists of our program consultants, Paul being one of them, our program evaluation team, and our program finance team. And it's important that these 3 units work collaboratively together when assigned to a provider. This, we try to illustrate, each of the units have their own independent functions, but a lot of the work you will see lies in the middle is shared among the team members. And I'll get into a few in the next slide, but some of the areas I want to pull out and why it's important. So for example, an agency puts forward a budget amendment. It may be mathematically correct, it may be within budget. However, it may have program implications that our program consultant and our evaluators need to understand and know and make sure all of this is aligned before they approve. So it takes our internal team to be consistently communicating. When we look at what I just brought before about workforce stabilization, it took our 3 units to review those proposals and work collaboratively together to bring forward those recommendations. And we are going to be receiving quarterly reports on the progress and closely monitoring those efforts. For new program implementation, we just funded 2 new programs this morning. Through our overall RFP process, we funded 12 new programs. Onboarding new agencies to JWB is no small task. And it takes time and effort. In some cases, when we're working with a completely new agency that has never had a JWB contract, there's an entire acclimation period. Talk about learning acronyms and all of our requirements. Seeing it on paper is one thing, putting it into action is certainly another. So our teams work very closely with organizations in, I would say, the first 2-year time period of onboarding the program. And again, we receive quarterly reports on that progress. A few years ago, we created a risk matrix to help us tier the programs, because with 100 programs, we can't always have our eye on all of them at the same time in the same way. And so the risk matrix really helped us look at how we could tier this. And so it allows us to have multi-year contracts in some cases. What I would say is that we're still refining that process, right? We're always looking to refine the risk matrix. So that's just to show you the collaborative efforts that we put together for those 3 teams. Here we bullet out the program oversight activities. I promise you I'm not going to go in great detail on each one of these bullets, but each of these are important to the work, the ongoing work in providing oversight for our funded providers. And I'll pull out a few. As you heard, staff interviews, participant interviews, community partner interviews are really important to understand how they are experiencing the program. I'll use an example of kinship. When I first started here back in 2005, I was assigned to the kinship program. I was a program consultant. Well, we called them back then contract managers. I went out and visited each of the family support groups that were, the caregiver support groups that were happening. It was through those efforts that we understood the need for respite, childcare, and other needs. And then we could come back and have a good conversation here at JWB. What can we do about it? Do we want to invest more dollars? Do we need to make connections? So all of that is really important. Program observations. Our staff aren't just here doing desk reviews. They are out at programs and providers, seeing it in action, understanding sometimes the real challenges that are out there. When we talk about workforce shortages, when you go out to a program, we want to see ratios and compliance, right, for licensing. So all of that is really important to the quality of services that are delivered. We provide the feedback back to the agencies, talking about their strengths, talking about their challenges, and areas for opportunity. And this helps us, again, with focused technical assistance. We do file reviews to ensure data that's in our system or uploaded to our system is what we're seeing when we go on site there. So all of these pieces and parts are important that we collect and gather for this work. And now I'll hand it over to Laura.
Thank you. Next slide, thank you. So as far as the financial oversight, and that's sometimes a subject matter that people love to talk about, and sometimes others hate it when you have to look at your checkbook or reconcile things. But to kind of put this in perspective, so our annual expenditure budget is $112.8 million. Of that, $97 million has been budgeted for children and family program in our services area. That's 86% of our expenditure budget is the allocation to all these programs. Some of you have a copy of this budget and have asked, and I printed it and given it to you. This is it's on the website, but this gives you all the programs, the 100 programs that we talked about, and you can look it up either alphabetically or by focus area or so forth. But this is my Bible that I usually carry with me all the time because there's always a question related to it. But what I wanted to tell you is in the program finance unit, we have 1 senior manager and I have 5 financial analysts. And these 5 financial analysts have quite a bit of work that we have to do. I've kind of broken it into 2 pieces. So we've got the monthly reimbursement review and then the annual financial monitoring visit. On the monthly reimbursement review, of course, we're looking for compliance. Each program, each agency has a contract that they sign. In that contract, it indicates what the allocation amount is that they're going to get for their funds or their program. And it also has some fiscal and financial compliance areas. This is the things that we are trying to look at. In the contract, we offer a every other week reimbursement cycle. So all the programs can submit for reimbursement. We are cost reimbursement. They can submit for their reimbursement every other week, but at least once a month. Some of them choose to do it early in the month because they can quickly reconcile the previous month, get all their information together and submit. Other program agencies, they need 30 days or close to 30 days to get all that information. But that works well with us because that means we're cutting checks every other week as opposed to all the checks at one given time in a particular month. So what do we look at in these monthly reviews? They're looking at salary and benefit verification. You've got to understand that the majority of our funding to these different programs is salary related. Salary and benefits make up probably 85% of the reimbursements that they get from us. So they're looking at salaries and benefits. Can we look at every single one of them? No. Some programs have 100 positions that we are funding, whether we're funding it 100% or we're funding a portion of that position. So we get that information on biweekly, and they look through that to verify that, yes, we've got that position in the approved budget. We verify that the dollar amount is reasonable and based on that position. And then we look at operating costs. And when we look at operating costs, what do we want to know? We want to make sure that it fits within their budget. We go through a very rigorous process with the annual budget. They submit that to us once they find out what the allocation amount is that they will be awarded, and they submit the budget to us in detail. We want to know the line items, give us the explanation. It's kind of a bottom-up, so to speak, budget. We go through that budget process that starts in June and all the way up through the end of August, where we'll go back and forth. And I know I see people shaking their heads in the audience, and that's because sometimes we kick it back 4, 5, 6 times before we kindly get it. But once we get that budget approved by both parties, that's what we're following, and that's what we're dealing with from a compliance perspective. Karen did mention budget amendments. We get budget amendments throughout the year. The financial analysts have to deal with those as well. There needs to be a reason for the budget amendment. We need to understand why are they moving things, why are they adding something, but it doesn't change their total allocation. If the allocation is $500,000, that's all you're getting. But if you might want to move something, we need to understand why, because we already approved it as it has originally had been submitted. So we look at the adherence to budget. This is, like I said earlier, it's a cost reimbursement, so they have to have already incurred the expense. So we need to verify that they had already paid for this. And I want to make sure it's in the right time period. You're not going to give me an expense in October and it was something that was back in July. That's not going to fly. So we have to look to verify that the expense was in the appropriate budget category, the appropriate time. And then at the end of the year, we do an annual financial monitoring. So we do review the agency's external audit. I want to see the external auditor's financial statements. That's one of the compliance items in the contract. They have to submit to me their annual audit within 180 days of their year end. So I get to see the annual audit from the external auditor. As a former auditor for 40 years, I know most of the firms out there, and I can read through the statements fairly easy. What do I want to see? I want to see if they've submitted that audit to me timely. Did they have any findings from the audit? Did they have any material weaknesses? Did they have significant deficiencies? I look at their cash flow. I look at their concentration of grant funding. I look at related parties, footnote disclosures. We look at all of these things, and we put together metrics as well as far as percentages, and we're trying to determine if their quick ratio is good, or these other things. So I'm trying to look at some financial stability. We look at the agency's financial policies and procedures. Why is that important? Well, I want to see what kind of controls that they have. I'm not doing a full analysis of internal controls, but we come up with recommendations when we review these policies. What recommendation might I have? I might read in their policy that they don't have specific bank reconciliation processes. I want to see that they're reconciling their bank account within 30 days of the month, or they're getting approval and it's documented and signed. So we look at key things in their policy procedure manual. We offer suggestions and recommendations. We then pull a sample for testing purposes. I pull a sample of disbursements. We look at the detailed reimbursement items that were submitted. I want to make sure, again, in compliance with our financial policies and procedures, we don't reimburse for sales tax. These organizations, or I should say the 501c3s that we reimburse, they have sales tax exemption letters. They should not be submitting any sales tax for us to reimburse. We don't reimburse for alcohol. If they have an event or a some sort of event, not a fundraiser, they have an event, they can't be sliding through some of these things. So we're looking in compliance with the policies and procedures as well as their individual budget. We pull a sample for payroll. We want to look at their salaries. We want to get information from the personnel file to verify that that person that we pulled for testing, the salary is in agreement, it's been approved by their agency, and the documentation is there. Bank reconciliation, that's a big item for me as a forensic auditor for many, many years. The bank account and the bank statement is a key element in any financial review. I want to make sure they're being reconciled, it's being reviewed, it's being approved on a timely basis. And I didn't mean to go on so long, but again, I'm passionate relative to this. And the other items that I might choose to look at, I want to see they have a conflict of interest policy. Do they have a nepotism policy? I may ask for other additional information that I want to see. And we do all of this for all of the agencies on an annual basis. Now, we talked about a risk matrix. We're in the process of going through that risk matrix because with so many programs, we just aren't going to be able to do that on an annual basis. However, what we've decided we're looking at is for those programs that always submit on time, we never have to kick it back, you don't have any issues and so forth, maybe we can expand that to a multi-year or maybe do 2 years. But we're looking into that. When she switched to the multi-year contract, we did not on the finance side. I said, no, we're still doing it on an annual basis until we're comfortable that we can move in that direction. But again, now that I have 100 programs, it's a little more difficult for me to do that. Financial oversight and accountability, and so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I told you, dedicated, committed, and passionate. Okay. So, here we go. Reporting. So all of this work that gets done, we bring forward to you in different ways. Through our dashboard, and some of you who've been here for years may have remembered, it was a multi-page report. We have now gotten it down to 1 page. You'll be starting to receive those. I believe next month we're starting to get those to you, and you'll receive a certain amount every month until the end of the fiscal year. Financial monitoring reports, those are on file. If you ever want to know about any of those, you reach out to Laura Kruger-Brock for those. It helps us to make presentations to the board, the caregiver support program, literacy programs, and all the presentations that we do. All this information feeds into that. And of course, I've mentioned several times the new program implementation reports and the workforce stabilization. Keeping an eye on what we funding, is that actually happening out in the community, and ensuring that it is, both on the programmatic side and the financial side. And so with that, I open up for any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, I'm always happy to hear that we have somebody who cares about finance. And I always put out my disclaimer, I was a consultant, never an accountant, so I'm going to do it. Thank you. Okay. Building update, Laura Peel.
Yep, hello, I am back. And as I mentioned before, I am the Director of IT, but many of you may not know this, my unit is also responsible for the building. So I wanted to give you a quick building update and kind of let you know what's going on around here. So as a reminder, JWB subleased the back portion of our building to 211 pursuant to an initial 10-year lease that began in May of 2012. It's for approximately 3,000 feet in the back of the building. The lease required that the JWB give 12-month notice to terminate the lease after the initial 10-year period. 211 was seeking, more space for their operations. They were divided into 2 different buildings, their operations and administrative. So just to remind you, in January of 2022, you approved the termination of the sublease between 211 Tampa Bay Cares and JWB. This gave them a 17-month notice to move, which was longer than the 12 months required by the lease. So at this point, the termination is effective on May 1st, 2023, coming up really soon. And to let you know, 211 has found space on the other side of the epicenter closer to the skating rink, if you're familiar with that, so just a couple of blocks away from here. And they are in the process of moving out of our building. So at JWB, we started to explore what options we have. And the first one we were looking at was really a full renovation of the area to include conference room space and extra offices for staff. We got a high-level estimate from SPC, who owns our building, and that estimate was well over $1 million, possibly closer to 2. Yes, I was in shock as well. I see your face. So construction not only included putting up walls, carpet, paint, with the full remodel, it also requires that we look at the HVAC system, the air conditioning system, sprinkler systems, electric, Wi-Fi, network, architectural drawings, permits, all of that added to the price. On top of that, the high cost that's related to supply chain with construction materials, labor, and the availability of contractors is why it was really so high. So in the past, JWB has utilized St. Pete College for its construction. We've also used contractors depending on what we're doing. As a reminder, St. Pete College owns this building and we have a 100-year lease with them. So we talked to St. Pete College and said, okay, if we wanted to do this, how long would it take? Well, they said, we can't even start looking at you guys for 2 to 3 years. So when we started to consider maybe outside contracts, they were, again, much more expensive than even St. Pete College, and also had a large time lag. So in order to be responsible to the taxpayers and to the board, we began to look at a Plan B. So if we leave the general layout the way it is right now, we'll still have an increase of 4 closed-door offices and could utilize the large open area that was utilized for their call center as storage and a large production area for putting materials together such as the Sleep Baby Safely, the Turbo Babies, the Book Bus, and other materials for large conferences and meetings that we have here. This would free up at least 4 offices in the front. I don't know if you've walked through the areas lately, but there's a lot of clutter of boxes and, we're kind of putting things wherever we can. So altogether, it would increase our space to 8 offices and provide for that production area in the back. With this plan, we'd still require painting, which is covered under the St. Pete College agreement. We'd have to purchase carpet, furniture, some network cabling, Wi-Fi, and a look at our security system. But no architectural drawings, no permits, no large construction costs. With this plan, it's expected to be substantially lower than the 1 to 2 million. We're looking about 150,000 approximately, which is well within the budget that we had set this year for construction. And that work can be done a lot sooner, so JWB can start utilizing that space. So I talked to the executive team, and we're thinking we want to move forward with this smaller project at this time. We don't anticipate any of the costs individually to be over 50,000, but if it were, we would come back to the board and seek approval. But at this point, we've already started making the planning, and we just wanted to kind of let you know what's going on here at the building. So things are moving. Any questions?
Any questions? Brian?
So in terms of long-term, 3 to 5 years, maybe even 10 years out, how long do we think that this smaller project would be able to accommodate our needs, and when would we be needing to relook at a bigger project? Have we looked at that?
I see Beth put her light on, so.
Well, I'll be the one to say, we don't know.
Yeah.
What we do know is that it gives us all the flexibility in that space to do whatever else might best meet our needs. The biggest unknown, I think, is to what degree and for what period of time our employees are going to continue to work in a hybrid environment. Given the hybrid environment, while we do not have an office that every single employee can come in on a single day and be in, but for that circumstance, and frankly, when we get everybody together for something that's more of a social event and a bonding kind of time together, we go to a park, which is more amenable to that anyway and safer for anybody who's concerned about COVID. So for the near future, we think this setup is going to best meet our needs, but it also isn't going to, there will be very little to undo should we decide, oh, we do need 2 more conference rooms over there, we need 5 more offices over there. So for the near term, we think this building and this space will accommodate our needs.
If we wanted to have everyone come back to full-time office work, would we be able to accommodate that right now?
Nope.
And why is that?
There are not enough physical offices that all of the individuals could come in and have their own space or cubicle, for that matter. I'm counting cubicles as well. We were really close to the edge of that before COVID, and we would have needed to done something at that point in time, and the something we thought, again, pre-COVID we would do, would be to build out the 2-on-1 space into more offices. Instead, we haven't had to do that because what we've done is move to a sort of a hoteling concept for the vast majority of our employees, where when they need an office is made available to them, and they just have to, there's a software system, I think Yaw Rooms. Yep. So they register for the kind of room that they need. You know, do they need 2 screens up? Do they, you know, what kind of layout do they need? We do have everyone who supervises someone has a closed-door office in which they can supervise somebody and have those kind of conversations that need to be private and confidential.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, we have more employees now post-pandemic than we did pre-pandemic. Is that the issue?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I can add to that, before the pandemic, we were creating offices, finding cubbies, finding little corners. We even changed a couple of our conference rooms into offices, so even at that point, we were pretty limited.
That's true. We were doubling up. We had
Yes.
people in a few, I can think of in a few different areas in hallways, sort of, we just shoved a desk against a corner. So pre-COVID, we were pretty much at the max.
Got it. Okay. I think we should probably create some kind of subcommittee or some kind of strategic group that looks at building needs on a kind of a long-term basis. Obviously, I'm definitely comfortable supporting the your plan now, but I think that we should probably start planning for what does it look like in 5 to 10 years from now, because with uncertainty and pricing and, you know, when the market's hot, it's going to be expensive to get anybody to do any work because they're going to have a ton of jobs and they're going to be priced real high. When the market's not hot, it's going to be hard to get supplies, or it's going to be, you know, there's going to be interest rates are going to be high. I mean, there's all kind of challenges depending on what we're looking at. So I think we should probably start looking at that as kind of like a 3 to 5 year plan for what we want to do with the building.
We will do that.
Yeah, I would agree with Brian on that. My only other question I would have is, you talked about cubicles, adding cubicles to that space. If you were to think about that, that's what you've already done, and that would have been requiring new air conditioning and other things that would create that problem, or?
So, well, we weren't really looking at adding cubicles. It was the production space that we're really talking about putting in the open area. However, if, you know, as long as the walls don't go up to the ceiling, we can stay with the general configuration. We don't have to relook at the HVAC and fire suppression.
My question was really is more aligned with bringing people back in and having space for them in some way, whether it's, doesn't necessarily be an office, but a cubicle or the like. Can we do that, or we can't do that?
Yes, we could do that. Probably, we'd have to do networking to each of the cubicles, some electrical, but it definitely wouldn't be the same price as putting up, you know, regular walls.
Okay.
But it would be an increased price.
I mean, I would request that as you put this team together and look at those things, that might be one called stopgap option while you're looking at the future development and layout. Because I personally would like to see everybody back in the office.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a conversation that Beth and I had recently in preparation for the meeting, is that exactly the same conversation, is that you know, for the immediate, given the pricing, given the time lag. But I think what we're hearing around the table is that we really do need to prepare for the future and the possibility of a full workforce in the next, you know, and having everybody have a space, because now we have the space. But certainly understand the restraints we have right now. But you're hearing pretty much consensus here to plan for the future.
Yes, we will do that. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, Chief Executive Officer's report.
It's been an exciting few days. In this room, on January 31st, more than 50 partners, parents, and little baby New Years, we had some really cute babies in this room, who were dressed in our This Side Up onesies, joined JWB in a press event celebrating the news that our locally born and developed Sleep Baby Safely campaign is being expanded statewide. It was my pleasure to lead off by sharing how the campaign came about, acknowledging the investments and the commitment of our board to protect all babies from suffocation during sleep. And Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo then touted the campaign's success, big smile on his face. Everybody likes their picture taken with very cute babies. He was able to announce the first ever preventable child death funding in his budget that will support the campaign's expansion into 8 other Florida counties. So a special thanks go out to Juvenile Welfare Board Division Chief Jim Milliken of the Lillman Fire District, who has been a committed campaign partner in both as a board member here, but also in his day job, so to speak, as a representing first responders, and also to State Attorney Bruce Bartlett, who was in attendance on that day. We received excellent media coverage from all the major Tampa Bay media outlets, and as you would know, the babies in their safe sleep duds were definitely the hits of the show. The babies were brought by first responders who wanted to be here, and they wanted to bring their babies. Wanted to kind of give you a preview. This is not for action today, but I wanted you to kind of know some of what we're seeing relative to the Family Service Initiative. In recent years, that FSI resource pool has been significantly underutilized vis-a-vis budget due to the availability of the various and sundry federal programs. From the federal perspective, it was the CARES Act and ARPA, American Rescue Plan, but by the time it got here locally, it had all kind of different names, and I think we lost track. But the point is, many of them did provide assistance for emergency rent and for emergency utility assistance, and those are the 2 most expensive pieces that our Family Service Initiative pool has historically been used for. So as a result, in each of those years, we sort of monitored what was going on, made our best guess as to what was going to happen the following year, and reduced the budget that you saw for the Family Service Initiative. Well, now we're seeing, I won't say it's like the beach ball popping out of the water, but almost. All of those programs, all of those federal programs have ended, and at the same time, as I'm sure you're all aware, rents are much higher. The costs for landlords are much higher. They're experiencing higher interest rates, higher property taxes, higher property insurance. There just aren't enough affordable, whatever that might mean to you, places to live in Pinellas County. And so since those federal programs have gone away and rents have increased tremendously, the call upon our Family Service Initiative, or FSI pool, have just been going through the roof. Now, to give a sense of that, in the first quarter of fiscal year 23, so October through December, spending from that FSI resource pool exceeded our targeted budget by 42%. That's huge. Now remember, that's a budget that isn't nearly as high as it was pre-COVID. we kept reducing that budget, trying to get close to reality, but all of these things have kind of converged at the same time. So we've been closely monitoring that increased spending to see if we might see a decline. There is sometimes some seasonality to this in that there tends to be family and other goodwill during December. Fewer people are evicted. More families say, oh, okay, you can stay with us for a month and save your money until you could get into a new apartment, that sort of thing. And often in January and February, when tax refunds and the earned income tax credit monies come back to folks, those are months that we don't typically see as much demand on the FSI pool. However, that doesn't seem to be the case so far. Now, granted, we're just barely into February, so we're looking back into December and January, and those months continued to be really high. So we're watching it every month. What I asked our staff to do was take what the FSI budget had been pre-COVID and roll it forward to what it would have been this fiscal year had we just added COLA to it, or we had added CPIU, which actually you end up with about the same number. And the difference, you add that many years of increase, and it would have been significantly different than what our budget is the current year. So in rough numbers, our budget for the pool is about $1.3 million for this year. And at this rate, we'll run out of money in June, which is not what we want to do. If, on the other hand, we were able to do a budget amendment that would meet what we best project, it would in fact be pretty close to the same number had we given a COLA to the FSI through those years. I think, there are different ways to look at this, but one is to say, we, JWB, saved a whole lot of money during those years because the federal programs were available. And I would also want to really stress that our people and navigators and others in the community worked really hard to get families onto those federal programs first. So where it might have been easier to just use the FSI pool, we said, no, it's our responsibility to Pinellas County taxpayers that if these federal programs are available, and this is what they're for, that we would assist families get onto those programs. That was not easy. That was serious work, and a lot of people in this room helped make that happen, getting documentation. Every time a program came out, it was a little bit different. Sometimes it was in person, you had to go here. Sometimes it was online, and it was this portal, and that portal worked this way, and then the next portal worked a different way. So it was a lot of work through that period of time. But I give our staff and our related agencies and navigators a lot of credit for utilizing those funds as they were supposed to have been used. Another thing that happened during this period of time that this board has wanted to see happen for years is that we opened the front door. We, as you may remember, changed the front door from the call center into 211 into FSI Connects, and so that phone calls and data and requests via a very simple portal were coming in. Those were choices, but you could text in your request, and we can go back to when that change was made, and we also see that more and more families were able to get through, whereas we were seeing call center numbers that said people were abandoning calls in significant numbers. So they believed they had the need. We can't know whether or not they would have ultimately qualified, but we certainly saw a lot of people who believed they had an issue and a need that never got through, and so never got the assistance that the FSI program was intended to provide. So, given the lack of family shelter and the limited affordable housing in Pinellas County, what FSI is really focused on is helping those families these are the families we've always assisted with FSI, families that are working, They are typically sustainable, but they've hit that bump in the road for whatever reason, and there can be a lot of different reasons. We've really worked to try to keep them in their current residence and done pretzels to try to make sure that that happened, knowing that it's really, if they ultimately are evicted, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find another place. Certainly everything else within life, proximity to school, proximity to work, proximity to bus stations, all the rest are disrupted when there are moves. So we've really worked hard to try to prevent that from happening. So what you'll see is, me coming back in April or May, depending on when we think we have a better idea of these dollars. We've looked at the rest of our JWB budget in terms of future programming pieces that are all kinds of different pieces that we, at the beginning of the year, we set aside money to plan if we can do this and if we can do that. But even by early February, we have a better idea that the odds of us using this money, that money, or the other are perhaps not as great. So what I think you'll see is a request to move money from one budgeted area to FSI, not to increase the program budget of JWB in the aggregate. Let me just stop, and if there are questions about that, I mean, we will come back with a lot more information at a later point in time, but I wanted to give you a preview. Okay. The Florida Commission on Mental Health and Substance Abuse presented its interim report January 1st, so it's reasonably hot off the press. The commission was charged with submitting two different reports, an interim report January 1st, which they have, and a final report which will be due on September 1st, 2023. The background to this is that the legislature passed legislation which Governor DeSantis subsequently signed into law to establish this commission to look at mental health and substance abuse services across all the different, I'll call it silos, that exist within the state and the ways in which things are funded and delivered. So the commission's also responsible for assessing priority population groups that can benefit from publicly funded care and proposing recommendations for the creation of a single permanent state agency that will manage the delivery of these services. We don't know yet what that will look like. We just know that that's going on in the background. If you have any interest in seeing that interim report, we're happy to get that into your hands. JWB Summit, it was a great event. On January 27th, we hosted the summit with more than 200 in attendance, and it was a who's who, I'll tell you. It was an important group of people that were in that room. Mike got to announce our new Turbo Babies campaign. We got to share our annual report video. We looked into the future with a keynote speaker, Sean Snaith, who is a futurist by trade. What a thing to be a futurist, you know. But special thanks to our Chair Mike McCurrick and Vice Chair Patrice Moore for their contributions to the summit success, and to all of you for being there and bringing other folks there who we want to hear our story. Do we have time to play the video? Do you have the video? Yeah, we're going to play the annual report video. In Pinellas County, children are 16% of the population, but 100% of our future. The Juvenile Welfare Board understands this. For more than 7 decades, we've been making children a priority and investing to improve their futures. Last year, JWB celebrated an iconic milestone in our history, 75 years of putting children first. We memorialized the trailblazers from our past and leaned on our legacy of leadership. It was a year of reflection, an opportunity to look back, and, as importantly, ahead, envisioning the possibilities and planting seeds for our future. We invested in innovation to further our strategic plan, granted life-changing awards to our funded programs to stabilize their workforce, focused on great beginnings with an understanding that learning begins at birth, deployed big ideas to tackle issues facing families in the aftermath of the pandemic, and intervened early in the lives of children to grow hope. As we reflect back on the work and accomplishments of JWB and our partners last year, let us also look ahead and imagine what the next 75 years could bring.
Last year, JWB invested $93 million to improve children's futures, including $1.75 million for program capital awards. In total, 64,000 children and families were served, plus thousands more through collective work around childhood hunger, grade-level reading, and preventable child deaths, where partnerships and volunteers are key. Looking towards the future, we shared our mapping capabilities to measure child opportunity at the neighborhood level and merged two data systems for greater capacity and efficiencies. We welcome 2 new members to the JWB board, School Superintendent Kevin Hendrick and County Commissioner Chris Latvala, and our 3 community councils continue to bridge JWB to the families we serve. In an effort to reduce stressors, strengthen families, and ultimately prevent child abuse and neglect, JWB invested in a new respite services model that is based on national best practices. Aligned with the state's focus on fathers, JWB's collaborative work continued to support dads and give them a voice. And JWB's literacy and grade-level reading efforts continue to make early readers future leaders. Last year, a total of 16,000 books were given away, including to those who climbed aboard the summer book bus, which traveled the county bringing huge smiles to kids. Working to prevent needless deaths, JWB invested in water safety and swim lessons, serving 3,000 children, and learned our Sleep Baby Safely campaign that has successfully reduced local sleep-related suffocation deaths will be expanded statewide thanks to funding from Florida's governor. JWB sponsored trainings and events benefited nearly 3,000 last year, including a virtual summit on children's mental health, a week-long professional development series for our out-of-school time staff, plus JWB staff happily gathered together for an afternoon of team building and appreciation focused on self-care. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. This is definitely a mantra that could be used to describe JWB's key work and accomplishments last year. From a congressional acknowledgement, to a special tribute by the Florida House, to a resolution on the Senate floor, it was a year of celebration marking JWB's 75th anniversary. This momentous year culminated with a standing room only awards luncheon honoring JWB's legacy of leadership. We also recognized 12 outstanding social service workers with our annual Kids First Award, shining a light on their work and impact. And the inaugural Dillinger McCabe Leadership Award was unveiled, memorializing the legacies of 2 long-standing JWB board members who were fierce champions for children.
So join me, please, as we invite the Honorable Irene Sullivan, the first Dillinger McCabe Putting Children First Leadership Award.
It has been my honor as the board chair to be part of such a historic year for JWB. We were able to widely share our story, shine a light on individuals truly making a difference, and amplifying our mission of investing wisely for children. And with our anniversary milestones behind us, I'm excited for the future and can only imagine the possibilities that lie ahead.
JWB's funded agencies have experienced record workforce shortages, impacting delivery of quality services. Our child care centers were hit hardest. Many were forced to close classrooms, leaving working parents with few options. In our out-of-school time, home visiting, and mental health programs, there were long wait lists. We were at a critical point. Last year, JWB approved funding for workforce stabilization, starting with these essential programs. We initially committed $1 million with plans to annualize investments across our entire program portfolio.
JWB's workforce stabilization efforts are changing lives. Agencies are able to raise or increase salaries to meet market rates. They're able to add additional staff positions and provide professional development to retain quality staff. As an example, one provider has been able to cut their staff vacancy in half through these efforts. We imagine a more stable workforce, and in the end, this will provide quality services for our children and families in Pinellas County. And it is through our board's investments that we are able to achieve this vision.
JWB's strategic plan is the framework that guides our work and investments to ensure children are ready to learn, ready to succeed, and ready to thrive in homes, schools, and neighborhoods that are healthy and safe. Last year, we set in motion a funding opportunity for new, innovative programs that align with one of JWB's 5 strategic goals.
JWB released 2 competitive solicitations totaling $6.5 million to address the unmet needs of children and families in our community. While this was a monumental undertaking, it took extraordinary effort of the JWB staff, and the impact will be huge. These investments have fostered innovation, created greater opportunities, and ultimately will strengthen the lives of many more children and families annually in Pinellas County.
Children and their caregivers continue to experience unprecedented amounts of stress and anxiety. Since launching the Children's Mental Health Initiative 4 years ago, we have forged new relationships, executed innovative ideas, and supported more children with same-day access to mental health services within pediatric settings. Last year, we moved beyond Evra Health's 6 locations to include North Pinellas Children's Medical Center. We also sponsored dozens of community town halls to increase suicide awareness. And JWB's Chief Administrative Officer, Linda Leedy, was recognized with the Inspiring Hope Community Award for her steadfast leadership of the initiative.
We imagine a world where there's no stigma associated with mental health or mental health diagnosis, a time when we all realize that mental and physical health are equally important to our well-being, and that when we say health, we mean both. Last year alone, we completed thousands of universal screenings for trauma and depression within our partner pediatric practices. And as a result, 1,400 kids had at least one visit with a therapist, and 500 had same-day crisis interventions. Our collaborative efforts are demonstrating results. We are reaching more kids and families with early interventions.
We are listening to and lifting up the youth voice, reducing stigma and growing hope.
The lasting impact of a child's first 1,000 days is well documented, as is the benefit of investing early.
80% of brain growth happens during a child's first 3 years of life. This validates the importance of early connections, screenings, and education. Research shows that the financial payback for investments in early childhood is huge. For every dollar spent, there is a measurable $16 in economic returns. Plus, the individual and community gains are priceless.
JWB is committed to giving children the opportunity for great beginnings. Last year, we opened a new high-quality early learning academy for children ages 2 months to 3. Continue to leverage our 0 to 3 think tank, and created a new campaign called Turbo Babies to support parents and other caregivers as their child's first and best teachers. We also explored ways to best support families raising grandchildren, invested in early developmental screenings, and distributed more than 8,000 books as part of Reach Out and Read with area pediatricians. Even though the pandemic has subsided, the need for families has not. JWB continues to lift up big ideas to create efficiencies and build capacity. Guided by our Childhood Hunger Initiative, JWB invested $4 million to fight childhood hunger and distributed 5.6 million meals last year. We continue to fill food gaps for children, advocated for greater food access for families, created pantries by Teens for Teens, and invested in bulk food purchases and a centralized hub to support dozens of food partners countywide.
While the pandemic saw historic numbers of families seeking food assistance, families' need for nutritious food is only increasing. Last year, through JWB's leading support, we were able to distribute over 20 million pounds of food throughout Pinellas County. We do this through food pantries, through partner organizations, through neighborhood family centers, even through child care centers.
JWB also streamlined the way families access real-time support through our Family Services Initiative. By moving the entry point for families to initially seek help, barriers were eliminated and efficiencies gained through a more technology-driven, family-friendly approach. Handling an average of 200 calls and 100 online applications each week, PEMS's FSI Connect offers a seamless connection for families to receive support from basic needs assistance to family navigation services.
As JWB looks forward to another 75 years, we imagine a future full of hope. A world where every child is valued, where collaboration and partnerships are embraced, big ideas are encouraged and innovation pursued, and where we are accountable to one another to always do what's right for kids. Imagine a place where all children have equitable opportunity to fulfill their potential and achieve meaningful and purposeful lives. Just imagine.
Once again, that was well done. And we thank the team for taking the time to put that together. I think it's another award winner. I don't know about anybody else. Okay. You've got information items in front of you. Are there any questions or comments on any of those? Seeing none, Beth, would you like to make the announcements of anniversaries?
Happy to. Jennifer Dodd has 1 year anniversary. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez, 2 years. Linda Leedy, 8 years. Diana Caro, 11 years. And Yarides Garcia, 16 years. Congratulations.
Okay, you see all the future board meetings are on the list below, and seeing no other business in front of us, I adjourn this meeting. Good. That was good. I mean, the videos.